My second retirement from running, which actually involved a period of not running at all, which was extremely unusual for this guy. After the Austin Marathon in 2002, I decided to stop competing and just to run every day. I ran anywhere from 4 to 5 miles, 30 minutes to 45 minutes a day, continuing to stay really fit. And I actually took up golf and played a lot of golf for a while. I wasn't a good golfer, but could consistently get in the 95 to 105 range, which was terrible. I mean, my gosh, is there even a handicap that high? But I enjoyed it and played as many as 50 rounds one particular year. So that was sort of a new hobby. And I took up cycling, and I became avid about cycling and started with a rather inexpensive mountain bike, and then kept running into road cyclists who were going much faster than I was. So I decided to purchase a road bike and really got into riding long distances, and met up with some members of the Southwest Cycling Club in Houston, started riding with them a lot, and decided to give competition a try. After one race, I was hooked. Totally different type of competition, much more dangerous, obviously, than running, but exciting nonetheless. And I noticed that anytime the road went up, I was doing quite well, and I had to work a lot on my power since I was a small guy. So I competed in several races over the next several years. One particular training ride, someone hit their brakes in front of me, and my front tire collided with theirs. I hit the brakes too suddenly, flipped in the air, and landed on my lower back and actually fractured my pelvis. Well, I was able somehow to pedal back to my car and then eventually back home, but I was so sore I could barely get up the stairs, couldn't walk. I noticed, though, that even the next day I could actually ride an indoor bike on my indoor trainer. I couldn't walk and definitely couldn't run, so within less than a week, I was actually out on the roads riding again, but not running. In the previous months, etc., I had actually run 30 to 45 minutes a day even before going for my ride each day. So I was still running even though I wasn't competing in running. But at this particular point, I couldn't run, so I just decided to ride full time and became even more obsessed with cycling, riding over 400 miles most weeks, competing even more often once my hip healed. And finally, after several crashes, mostly in races, which are quite dangerous if you're not careful and if you're old and prone to falls as I was, I broke my collarbone 6 times, fractured my ribs several times, once in the back, and actually partially punctured one of my lungs, was in the ICU for several days, and amazingly to my students, I was back at school as soon as they let me out of the hospital. Quite a bit of pain. I never took painkillers. I just didn't like the effect they had. So I guess I did take painkillers once and didn't like the effect, and refused to take even Advil or Motrin for my injuries. So I just basically suffered in silence, and was always aware when injuries heal because the pain would go away, right? After all of those crashes and about 6 years as a, 6 years as a competitive cyclist, I decided that enough was enough. I was spending a lot of money on doctor bills and really wanted to get back into running, so I decided to compete in 2 more races I'd already signed up for, the Iron Horse Bicycle Classic and the Mount Evans Hill Climb. Both of these were mountain races in Colorado, and the Iron Horse Classic starts in Durango and ends in a little town called Silverton. Well, I'd never been to Silverton, so I actually competed in this race. You go up over 2 mountain passes, Coal Bank Pass, Mullis Pass. I've actually had those on videos on my YouTube channel. And you finish in the town of Silverton after 48 miles. So I actually did pretty well in that race. I was 21st overall in the Masters. That's the 45-plus category. And fell in love with this little mountain town of Silverton. Had no idea that I would someday end up here. So that was my introduction to Silverton, Colorado, 2009, May of 2009. I, less than 4 weeks later, I think it was maybe 3 weeks later, competed in the Mount Evans Hill Climb, which starts in Idaho Springs, climbs to the top of Mount Evans on the highest paved road. At least then it was the highest paved road in America. And in that particular race, in the 45 plus category, I finished 17th overall. I was actually 7th overall in the 50 and over category. So a lot of people were looking at the results, and they would see names or places like Montana, Colorado, Utah, Texas. Who the hell is this guy from Texas riding a mountain race? And so I was pretty proud of that accomplishment, having trained in the 95 and even 100 plus degree temperatures of Austin, riding up and down hills, but no long mountain climbs, obviously. So that was my cycling career, and I'd promised myself that after Mount Evans hill climb, that was it. I was going to hang up the cleats in the bicycle and eventually get back to running, and so I did. And more on that process of returning to running in my next video.